again, my dude. This is Kadima with another Dragon's Dogma 2 build video, this time using the Mystic Spearhand. A very good all-around build, making the best out of using strength and magic as source of damage. You'll be doing physical damage and magic damage at the same time. So the best way to do this build, in my opinion of course, is to make the best out of both worlds and try to get as much strength damage and magic damage as you can. To do so, let's take a look at the status. I am level 96, currently with 2060 health and 1360 stamina. Now when it comes to the total base numbers of this build, strength is at 1065, defense is at 843. Magic is at 964 and magic defense is at 769. But also we have a knockdown power of 800. We also have quite a lot of elemental resistances and debilitation resistances, as you can. Our knockdown resistance unfortunately is quite rubbish, but you can do something about it if you upgrade your equipment with the dwarven um, blacksmith instead of the Vermonian. I should have done that. I recommend you guys do that instead, because in terms of defense numbers you are already high enough, but the knockdown resistance could actually have some work done onto it. But let's talk about the damage output. Because the Mystic Spearhand uses both physical and magical damage, the higher your strength and the higher your magic, the more damage you'll be doing. And this is what I went with when coming up with this build. Now, with strength 1065 and magic 964, this is giving us a combined total of 2000, more than 2000 damage, which is pretty much insane, considering that the spearhand actually hits quite fast. It's got a quick move set, and there are certain skills that make the best out of having a quick move set, and allowing you to dish out damage as quickly as possible. So you'll be doing tremendous amount of damage, despite no matter what enemy you are fighting. Small enemies will most likely get one shot. Big enemies, you'll be able to do chunks of damage if you use the build the right way. Before I talk about the skills that I'm actually using, a quick mention of the equipment that I actually got. I'm using the Lindworm's Fang upgraded with the Dwarven Blacksmith. This will increase not only the strength and magic, but also the knockdown power, which for the Mystic Spearhand is actually quite important, because you'll be doing not only a tremendous amount of damage, but you will be getting your enemies staggered and knocked down quite quickly. When you do that to your enemies, you have two ways to go. Either you shred them with the Darth Maul moveset that I'm about to mention in a minute, but also if you just simply press triangle, you'll be piercing their weak spots for tremendous amounts of damage. And I strongly recommend that you try that. For the helmet, I'm using the Dragon Knight's helm, which you get from the Dragon Forge. Same thing with the spear. The Duelist's coat for the chest armor, also from the Dragon Forge. It looks quite good, but there's another second piece that actually looks great, and you can get it from the other normal vendors. I'm using for the leg piece the Strider's Greaves, big defense. For the cloak, of course, I'm using the Champion's Mantle. It's my favorite. I absolutely love it. For the rings, I've got the Ring of Triumph. I still think it's a good all-around ring, no matter what vocation or build you're using. And the Ring of Vehemence, which is going to increase even more the stagger and knockdown capabilities of this build. I strongly recommend that you use this one as well. So for the skills, I'm using my personal favorites. I recommend you try to using at least 3 of these. There's one that it's debatable and it's entirely your choice. I like to use it for reasons that I will explain shortly. First and most important skill, I think it's the Dragon's Foin. This is our gap closer. As soon as you are close enough to the enemies, you perform this skill and you'll be getting close to your enemies, and also it has a tremendous knockdown and staggering power. So small enemies will get staggered straight away or interrupted straight away, big enemies, like a dragon, for example, if they are casting the spells, this can actually interrupt them as well because it has a tremendous knockdown and stagger power, considering the numbers that I just showed you a minute ago. Second skill is the amazing name they came up with, Skiedragonsfest, or whatever that is pronounced. This is basically the perfect way to combine the previous skill with a follow-up damage skill. So first you close the gap by getting close to the enemies as the video shows, and then as soon as it hits, you do this one and you will be hitting them from above with a spear piercing attack on their heads. The other good thing about using this combination, particularly when fighting bigger enemies, such as a chimera or a dragon, is that once you close the gap and you jump on top of their heads to do the piercing attack, you will stay on top of them, which is very good because you will be away from their attacks. Just remember that you can be sent off their backs if they start jumping around. You can fall and take fall damage. Uh, but if you don't actually need to grab onto them because you'll just be standing there. And just by standing there, and the perfect example will be a chimera, you can actually do damage to the goat's head. And if you do it the right way with the Mystic Spearhand, you want to press triangle instead of square, because every time you press triangle, it is a slower attack than pressing square, if you're on the PS5 that is, but the chunks of damage that you will be doing are just insane. And not only that, the triangle attacks when hitting weak points do a lot of stagger damage as well. So that's a good way to go around when using this build. The third skill that I recommend you actually use is the Wild Fury. This is our ultimate skill for the Mystic Spearhand. It's a massive combination of physical and magical damage because not only you are doing your damage with the spear, but your magical shadow is doing damage on their own, which comes from your magic source of damage. So if you have both physical and magical damage at high outputs, this skill will absolutely shred through everything. Groups of enemies will be gone, and big bosses, big targets, you will just see their HP bars melt quickly. Keep in mind that this uses a lot of stamina. You can only do a complete combo once um, without running out of stamina. So the best thing to go on about this is having Gandalf, in my case, Gandalf as a mage, using the skill that allows for just infinite stamina for a small period of time. And when it uses that, that's when you will be using the Wild Fury because you can actually spam it more than twice. I think you can go as far as 3 or 4 times if you do it correctly. The other thing you want Gandalf to do is to have your mage to do is to have a magical boon of swords, an elemental affinity to enchant your weapon with. I prefer fire in this case because fire actually looks extremely badass with this build and with this weapon in particularly. It looks absolutely awesome. You can go with lightning if you know you are about to fight Medusa or them wolves or dragons. Adapt to whatever you know you are about to fight. Because I'm just in endgame and I'm not fighting anything in particularly, and again, I like the way fire looks, I'm using the fire. Let's talk about the core skills. Scattering Bolt, it basically allows you to use the R1 and instantly stagger the enemies. This works on small enemies, not on big enemies, but this is particularly useful, in my opinion, when you are fighting airborne enemies, such as harpies or or the other like eagles, succubi, that's the name. Um, because if you use the R1 fully charged and then you press R1 the instant it connects with them, it will stagger them and it will make them fall out of the sky. So you can then press triangle and finish them off straight away. The quick thought, I mean, this is another way to have a gap closer without using the weapon skill. Because I'm using the weapon skill, I tend not to use the quick thought so much, but it is also a good skill to have. The Farine Bolt basically just gives you more range, and the Winding Cut, it's actually an amazing skill that makes you look like you are Darth Maul from Star Wars, and it allows you to shred enemies' HP bars. This is particularly useful in a specific situation. Let's say you have just used Wild Fury and you are nearly out of stamina, and a big boss just happens to be knocked down. The best way to go about doing damage will be doing the Winding Cut next to their heads or their weak spots, especially if the weapon happens to be enchanted at the time, because it will proc them getting caught on fire, for example. So if you do it right, this is an absolute HP melting machine. Let's talk about the augments. Keep in mind that with the Mystic Spearhand, the augments are actually not so much mandatory. You can go with what you actually prefer, what is convenient for you. I like to do it this way because I want to have as much damage per hit as possible, and in that case, I think this is the best combination to do so. Zeal, as everybody knows, is from the warfare. It reduces the stamina consumed when performing a weapon skill. Lethality from the archer increases damage dealt when striking an enemy's vitals. Exaltation augments stamina recovery speed. Verve augments strength. Sagacity augments magic. And dominance augments knockdown power. So as you can tell by these, particularly by these three, I'm just trying to get as much damage out as possible per hit. The exaltation, lethality, and zeal are also going to help with that, because if you can consume less stamina, you can do skills more often. And lethality, if you are hitting the target's vitals, you'll be doing more damage as well. And exaltation, if your stamina regens faster, you'll be able to do weapon skills again quicker. Now let's talk about this,
Always a pleasure.
the examples that I have for you about how to go with the using the Mystic Spearhand. But before I do that, just a quick note. When you are using the Mystic Spearhand, it is of course important that you have a mage in your party. I have my Gandalf, and he's configured to exactly how I want him to be, with the fire affinity, with the skill that allows for infinite stamina, and then of course he has the heals and the other skill that allows to get rid of any nasty effects you might have, such as sleep or poison. I like to have my mage to do those things. So it heals me, it cures me, it gives me infinite stamina, and it gives me a buff. That's how I like to have my mage. Unfortunately, not all mages in the Rift happen to be like that. There's always one thing missing, so I rather have Gandalf as my mage, programmed exactly how I want him to be. When it comes to using the Mystic Spearhand, I strongly recommend that you have a warrior or a fighter in your party. The reason being, you want them to tank at least one or two enemies while you are dishing out damage to another two or three at the same time. Or if you are fighting a big boss, you want him to get the boss's attention, so you can be at peace on their back, dishing out damage, pressing triangle, without the boss even taking notice of you being there. As for the fourth member, you can go with a sorcerer or an archer or whatever you prefer. I like to go with a thief, because thieves steal things from enemies. Not only when they are knocked down with a plunder, which I recommend you always get a thief with plunder, but also with the carve. As they go, they will steal things all the time. Particularly in the Enmor world, you get wake stones, fairy stones, pieces of armor, etc. So it's my recommendation that you have these three in your party when using the Mystic Spearhand. Now let me give you a few examples on how fun and strong this build actually is. Now, the gap closer not only is a good gap closer, but it also allows you to traverse the map in certain situations like I just did. And in this very first example, I'm gonna show you how to destroy this little man as quickly as you can. So you land on its head, the triangle the button, and it's already dead. It's that easy. Especially when you have your weapon on fire, it just does so much damage. It's crazy. For this next example, we get actually a good fight while simultaneously fighting skeletons and harpies, so you have to keep your wits about you to ensure you destroy their skulls and that you avoid getting picked up by the harpies and cast off into the infinity, because that's what the RPs do. They just throw you off cliffs and stuff like that. Here I am using the bolt by holding the R1 and then releasing and pressing again as soon as it hits to stun them in mid-air. So easy does it. The triangle for the kill. And now for the last RP. I don't know why I was looting mid-combat, but whatever. We all have issues. R1, RP lands, gap closer, and then a few more hits for the kill. Job done. On this example we got Medusa. Right, keep in mind that I was not trying to get her head, so because of that I only want to do damage. I'm not really worried about getting her head or anything. So you climb onto her back, and then we are just going to press triangle. And you can see how much damage the triangle hits do. Every single hit does a tremendous amount of damage. And now that the weapon is on fire, it does slightly more damage, which is beautiful because you don't have to worry much. You just destroy the weak spots of your enemies. Yes, she made me fly off her back, which is fine. I'm trying to use the gap closer on her chest, but unfortunately the game was choosing to go for her tail for whatever reason. So I have to thank Gandalf for getting my stamina back up, and I have to tell Medusa off for throwing me off her back straight away when I was about to do more damage. So that made me slightly upset, and because of that I had to teach her a lesson and slice her stomach open. Now back onto her head, press triangle. That does a lot of stagger and interrupts her attacks, as you just saw it did. And she's gonna make me fly again, I have a feeling. And she did. There you go. Thank you, Medusa. You are very kind, and it's always nice to fly off your back. Now, for the finishing moves, again, I went with the ultimate just for some cheap damage. Back onto her back. Climb this toe of a serpent, and as soon as you get there, press triangle, and job done. You even get to do a little finishing just for the style of it. For the next example, I'm fighting that headless knight phantom guy. This guy is everywhere in the Enmor world, which is funny, and he's very tough to kill. You see that I just used the gap closing move, the Dragon's Point, just to escape his AoE. Now back onto his back, do some damage from above, and then we do the ultimate skill. That did a tremendous amount of stagger. He wasn't staggered straight away, but you see that he's staggered now. You go with a triangle, it chips his damage massively, and then you do the Darth Vader skill and his HP just melts. Look at how fast it's coming down just by spamming that square button. It's absolutely insane. And yes, you see what I meant when the weapon on fire looks badass? That's what I'm on about, guys. Next example, I actually was coming to this fight just to kill the Phantom, but then this lizard decided to show up out of nowhere. I didn't even see it was there. And then a second lizard decides to join the party, so I had to slice his tail by doing the piercing triangle thing. And then this guy decided to join the party as well, but what I want you to take notice is how much damage this spear does on his face when it's enchanted with a fire. Look at the insanity of this damage. It's absolutely crazy. You can actually see chunks of HP gone per hit. Now, this is the time when I explain why I love my fourth skill, which is the Onto Heaven skill. And the reason why I love that skill, and I didn't talk about it so far, it's because of this. Yes, this is the reason why I like this skill. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys give this build a try. It's absolutely fun. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in the next one, of course. Cheerio!